Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. Okay, let me start from here. You're able to see my screen, right?
Yes, Rajeev.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So now, the first point which I would like to make an admission before I start this, because which is what I got uh, from the beginning of Brahma Sutra itself, is that any learning to be qualified as a learning which is of importance, it should have three things. One is the person who is going to impart this learning is called Vaktra. Um, and the second thing is here the people who are receiving it, Stotra, and the Prasanga, the reason or the Prayojana of it. So now, any learning to be qualified as Paravidya or the Vidya which is the one or which is the good one, so-called good one, it should have these three entities, which in which we can say the Vaktra, the person who is going to impart the knowledge, should be of should be a thorough master in this thing. He should have perfect senses and he should have intellectual brilliance. He should be of great knowledge of the topic itself. And even if the guru knows the truth, it is not necessary that he has the intention to teach the disciples that are not worthy. So the disciples were qualified to learn the teachings, and they should also be beloved of the guru. And then it combines together as to see that okay, that there's a person of technical brilliance, of intellectual capability, he knows the topic, and there's a receiver who is equally interested to know a topic. Then it becomes good conversations. Now, if both these two things are there, and if the prayojana or if the occasion or the purpose of learning this also should be of good intention, or it should be beneficial. Otherwise, you could study a lot of topics. There are a lot of topics in which the guru is of technical brilliance and the disciples want to know it, but sometimes it may so happen that it may not give you that benefit. For example, people say, um, why should I not invest in, say, Kama Shastra, for example? Now, there is a technical brilliance guru. People are, of course, interested, but does it give you the everlasting happiness, or does it give you the required prayojana? So in that way, it starts. So in that way, people starts in that way in Brahma Sutra. It is started as this is the knowledge that is required for happiness, and therefore now Vaktra comes from because the person is Vedavyasa who created this, Badarayana who has created this, and he is a person of technical brilliance, and he has all the good intentions to teach the people. Is trustworthy and therefore cannot be questioned. And Stotra, again, it was told to other gods like Brahma and Rudra, and then it is one thing that leads to mukti or liberation or happiness. So there's a purpose here, and all those things come together, and therefore this Brahma Shastra is qualified as a Paravidya. And in this context, I should say that I do not have enough knowledge about it, and therefore I don't become a clear Vaktru here. And so you should take it at you should probably not take it at everything what I say as the real thing, but maybe it's just a trigger to bring out some thoughts. So now I also did some sort of analysis about different religion and what are they looking for. For example, if I took about Hinduism, Christianity, also did some research about Islam and Buddhism, and tried to find out some common points across these religions. What do they say? So in doing that, I could find 3 points which intersect among these religions, especially Hinduism, Christianity, maybe Islamic as well, and Buddhism. One is they probably tend to agree that right conduct is the first means, is one of the means. Free from worldly attachment is the second one, which I think they most probably also tend to agree. And meditation, I put it as red. And I also put this quote from Christianity, which also talks about, how much, they also do not they also speak in terms of detachment, not to get indulged too much in worldly pressures and those kind of things. As you see here, it's a vanity, therefore, to seek riches which must perish and to trust in them. It's a vanity. It's a vanity to be ambitious of honors and to raise oneself up to high station. It's a vanity to follow desires of flesh and to desire that which you must afterward be grievously punished. It's a vanity to wish for a long life and to take little care of leading a good life. So there is this a sort of a feeling in almost all religion that overindulgence in materialistic objects is probably not good, and the right conduct is anyways, I think it's there in almost all the religions. Meditation is something which I found the Eastern religion, especially the Buddhism, has this one way, whereas other religions, especially the Hinduism, Christianity, and Islamic, have what I found out or what I could interpret as a different way of meditation. Whereas Buddhism primarily emphasizes on emptying your mind, saying that no thoughts, emptying your mind. Whereas what I could find out from Hinduism, Christianity, and Muslim is, and Islamic also maybe, although they use the word meditation, is that fill your mind. But you got to fill your mind with God. You have to fill your mind with one which is all powerful, and they believe who has created and who is going to sustain the universe. So in that sense, the concept of meditation probably differs from Buddhism to other religions. Again, if I look at, if I split Hinduism into two parts, they also seem to be pretty different in the way they interpret Brahma Sutras. Remember, Brahma Sutra itself came out as a probably as a summary of the Vedas by Vedavyasa. It was itself meant to bring in some sort of summarization of for the different sutras that are there in Vedas. But then the three acharyas have their different interpretations. Probably Shankara had a very different interpretations from the others. So you have a non-dual and a dualistic here. And if I further split it into Buddhism and Christianity, what I saw is that the dualist and the realist tenet of this philosophy probably has some ground. I would not say everything. Probably at the very high level have some commonality in the way they look at God, they look at self, and they look at reality. The dualistic philosophy has no doubt that whatever we see and experience is real. It is not an illusion. The relationship between the God and the self is a love relationship. It is master and then the disciple sort of a relationship. And the purpose of the life is to probably move towards that God. So in that aspects, I could see some high level agreement between the dualistic philosophy and the Christianity philosophy. In terms of non-dual and Buddhism probably did not see anything about God and self at all. Non-dual had tenets of God because they come with the first thing of Brahma Satyam, which means to say they do believe in God. And the commonality I could find in these things was with respect to karma and illusion. I'm not sure if Buddhism called whatever you see as an illusion. Probably they call it a kshenika, which means to say it is temporary, it is not real, and therefore it's not to be believed. But non-dualists came up with a very different version of whatever you see is not real. And the common thing that I could see between non-dual and dualist was related to God and karma. So all in all, I could see if I take the least common denominator, at least among the religions, they tend to have one common agreement about God, who is the creator, sustainer, and destroyer of this world. And the purpose is to see if we could know him. So, and when it comes to Brahma Sutra again, Again, now the question also came up in our discussion about spiritual circle as if Brahma Sutra or Vedas have to be believed, then what about people of other religions, right? So now that is where I went in to see what this consists of. I'm at a very initial stage of Brahma Sutra. I'm probably even not I think the Samanvaya Adhikarana. I'll talk about this. The Samanvaya Adhikarana itself has many sutras. I've just touched upon 8 or 9 sutras of Samanvaya Adhikarana so far. So all in all, I think there are 555 yogi, if I'm right. I'm not sure if I heard somewhere it's 565 also, but I got to know it is 555 sutras in Brahma Sutra. Divided into 4 chapters: Samanvaya, Avirodha, Sadhana, and Phalam. And at this point of time, there is absolutely no mention of God. There's no customs. There's no traditions. I think it is coming from it's coming from Purva Mimamsa, if I'm right. Because there's other part which is called Uttara Mimamsa, which primarily deals with. It's okay now.
Your voice started breaking.
Now it's fine.
It's fine for me. Disturbance is from your side, Samba.
Yeah, it's fine
for me. Rajesh's voice is very clear.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay. Thank you. I will check.
Okay. So what we're dealing now is probably the Pura Mimamsa part of it. Yogi, I'm right. Is it Pura Brahma Sutra deals with Pura Mimamsa, right?
Brahma Sutra is Uttara Mimamsa. Purva Mimamsa is it is Mimamsa philosophy of Jaimini.
Okay. So it's primarily deals with Uttara Mimamsa. So if I could broadly tell it's at a high level, it's 4 chapters: Samanvaya, Avirodha, Sadhana, and Phalam. Now Samanvaya means that all the Vedic text talks about Brahman, the ultimate reality, which is the goal of life. Now, if I tend to correlate with what they bring in, now, if I could quote one shloka there, which I put out directly from the Dvaita philosophy, they say, Narayanam Gunai Sarve Udiranam Doshavarjitam Gneyam Gamyam Guruschapi Natva Sutrartha Uchyate. Now, this is the shloka. Now it is a rudi for us to think that Narayana is a Hindu god, but language of Sanskrit is such that they bring in this yogartha. Yogartha means each word in Sanskrit has a meaning to it. It is not like the word has come through rudi. And there's a purpose to it, and then this is a great significance. Now, one of the meanings of the word Narayana, if you can split it out, is na plus ara plus ayanam, which means to say the person who is ara is defects. Na ara is the person, the entity. You can't call it a person either. That's why I think they use the word tad, that, which means that thing which is freed from all the defects and it is full of qualities is Narayana. Right? Which means to say, at this point of time, there is no religion to it, there is no customs to it, there's no tradition to it. Now, if I could just say what is the interpretation of Islam on the same thing, I also did something, and when I found God in Islam, they also say the God is the eternal super being who created and preserved all things. In Islam, God is conceived as absolutely one, unique, perfect, free from all faults, deficiencies, and defects, and further held to be omnipotent, omniscient, and completely infinite in all his attributes, who has no partner or equal, being the sole creator of everything in existence. Islam emphasizes that God is strictly singular, all merciful, all compassionate, whose mercy embraces everything, who neither slumbers nor sleeps, nor is obnoxious to decay or death. So this is a striking similarity in which, because the word is so much associated with a particular religion by Rudy, we tend to think that this Brahma Sutra is talking about a particular religion, which I found in the beginning that it is not. And therefore, I was trying to split the word Narayana and then try to see if what do other religions talk about. In general, they talk about the same thing, that there is someone who should be creating this universe, who should have complete control about it, and at his will he can do these things. And then B.N.K. Sharma's book of philosophy of Madhvacharya, I think they also bring in this. They also start from the beginning as to why should you have someone whom you should believe as God. Maybe it's also if you read through this book, they start from that point onwards as why is it essential to have a theistic nature and not an atheistic nature. So they start from it. And the pattern that they generally follow in this Brahma Sutra is they propose a Siddhanta, which means to say they propose what needs to be told, what is their Siddhanta or what is their point of view. And they bring in the possible objections to that Siddhanta by themselves. And this is where I was probably relating it to a test-driven development. Because here are the scenarios that they think which can be opposing views for the Siddhanta, which means to say they are bringing in the scenarios which are objectionable to the proposed Siddhanta, which we call Purva Paksha. And now they list out all the Purva Pakshas to the Siddhanta, and then they start refuting the objections. Say this is a Purva Paksha for the Siddhanta, and now they refute Purva Paksha 1 because of logic 1. They refute the Purva Paksha 2 because of logic 2, and then they establish a Siddhanta. So in a way, a lot of logic goes into it, a lot of thought goes into it, and it is just not saying that belief. It is just not our belief. Again, to establish this, you ultimately have to rely on something else, and different religions have adopted to different scriptures. For example, Hinduism might say that ultimately the scriptures are the final. Christianity might say that Bible is the final. Islam might say that Quran is final. But ultimately, if you look at the purpose of these texts itself, the purpose of this text, if I could summarize it, is to know God, is to know Him. Why do we want to know Him? Again, as I told before, because if you invest in any other thing, it is not giving us happiness, right? And therefore, it is a purpose to know Him, which could give happiness. Now, Samanvaya is the text that talks about the Brahman, ultimate reality. Aviroda discusses and refutes the possible objections against Vedanta philosophy. Now, again, Vedanta, the aim of Vedas is to know the Brahman, which cannot be different for other religions also. Now, sadhana is a place which describes by which the ultimate emancipation can be achieved, and this is a path through which the Brahman can be known. Probably Buddhism focuses more on this, is what I felt, but I have to see this more. And Palam talks about the state that is achieved in final emancipation, either in liberation or in moksha, and there is differences here. This is what I could find out. That once, what is the fruits of knowing Brahman? What is the fruits of doing its sadhana? So different religions have different interpretations there. Some religions do not believe in afterlife. But they do have a concept of soul. For example, Islam and Christianity, they believe in one life, and they do have a concept of karma, which says that whatever you do in this life you will reap the benefits of that in your judgment day or something like that. But Hinduism has a different concepts altogether. But the effects of karma or the palam seems to be different in different religions. But the samanvaya part and the sadhana part seems to be at a high level same, but varies in degrees in different religions. So now, if I have to summarize the essence of Dvaita in 4 lines, because again, Dvaita philosophy is a pretty big one. I'm still trying to digest that. I've not gone beyond, as I said, out of the 555 verses, not gone beyond 10 verses so far, quite in depth. And also, most of these things are in Kannada, and I'm not able to find sufficient English books also here, except for B.N.K. Sharma's book. So, a little bit background: it was found by Madhvacharya, 13th century AD. I think before that, the teachings were mostly on the non-dual part. So he questioned certain things. And then this 4 lines was written by a saint called Vyasaraja. I think if you know Vijayanagar Empire, then you would know Vyasaraja, because he was a Rajaguru of Krishnadevaraya, and I think if you go to Tirupati also, he was a chief priest in Tirupati for 12 years. If you come outside Tirupati temple, you would find a silver Vimana in Tirupati temple. It is there in the silver plate. That was, and if you inquire about it, you will find that was as a tribute to Vyasaraja. It was established because it was he prayed there for 12 years as a chief priest, and you could also see near the Pushkarani, one of the places where Vyasaraja used to meditate. So Tirupati has a special place for Vyasaraja, and he was a Rajguru of Krishnadevaraya. And he summarized this in 4 words, and I've kept it in Sanskrit. But let me talk about it. He says, Shriman Madhvamate Hari Parataraha. I will go to this words, each words. Hari Parataraha Satyam Jagat Vinna Jiva Ganaha Harer Anucharaha Nichocha Bhavangataha Muktihi Naija Sukha Anubhutihi Amalabhattihi Tat Sadhanam Prashaditrayam Pramanam Akilam Maneka Vedyo Hari. Now Hari and Narayana are same. Again, don't try to let's for time being get rid of this Rudy names of which comes as Rudy as Hindu deity or something like that. When Advaita philosophy clearly establishes that there's one and only one independent reality, which is God, is full of qualities and freed of defects. So now Hari Parataraha is the first word he brings in as a summary of Dvaita philosophy, which means to say Parataraha. Again, if you look at Advaita, is like Brahma Satyam, Mithya Jagat, Atma Brahma Na Paraha, which means to say Brahma and Atma Na Paraha. They are not different, is what non-duality says. But here he brings out differentiation and says Hari is Paratara, which means he is different from you. He's apart from you. Satyam Jagat, right? It's a clear opposite view of non-dual, which says Mithyam Jagat. Here he says Satyam Jagat. Bhinna Jiva Ganaha. Not only that, this philosophy brings out uniqueness among the Jiva Ganaha, uniqueness among the souls. That is, I am different from you, you are different from the other. No two souls are alike. They are different from each other. Harer Anucharaha, which means they are the replicas. They have similarities to Hari, which means to say the attributes of Ananda are there in the soul also, but they are not one. It's just the attributes are there, but you cannot get a Purnananda as the eternal God, but you have the glimpse of it. It's compared to sun rays and the sun. Nichocha Bhavangataha. It is to be expected that because there's a difference between the jivas, that there also be a hierarchy or a gradations among the souls. Because the souls are not unique, so you will expect a gradations among the souls. Nichocha Bhavangataha. Now this line is important. It says Muktihi Naija Sukha Anubhutihi. The Mukti part of it, the liberation part of it, the Moksha part of it, involves in Naija Sukha Anubhutihi, which means to say Mukti means realizing your own self is enlightenment or Mukti. And realizing your own self truly in the sense of your own, it is not others. For example, if somebody got somebody is enlightened now, and he is happy in his enlightenment, now you cannot experience that happiness. There's no path to experience the happiness. There's no one common happiness here. It is purely individual. Naija Sukha Anubhuti is your own natural self. And that could vary. For example, and that is where the gradation in Dvaita is very, very, very striking feature, right? They compare 2 glasses of different sizes, and both these glasses are full, right? Which means to say they are complete. Although the sizes are different, they are complete. And that is where these two lines, the Bedo Jiva Ganaha and Mukti is Naija Sukhanubhuti. It is realizing your own self. And Bhakti, Amala Bhakti, that sadhana means the way to realize yourself is Amala Bhakti. Amala Bhakti is Na Mala, which means to say it is um, freed from, what do you call Mala is
Dirt or blemish.
yeah, it's freed from blemish. It is freed from all blemishness, right? It is a pure bhakti, which is devoted to God, right? Which again brings on the point that knowledge alone is not sufficient to gain mukti, which is probably comes out as a high level highlight if you look at non-duality and Buddhists, that knowledge itself is sufficient for me to reach somewhere, to reach liberation. So Dvaita philosophy brings in an additional point of jignasa, that is Brahma jignasa leads to knowledge, and knowledge leads to love, and love leads love to God, and that leads to devotion, and that devotion brings in the grace of God. So Madhvacharya brings in an important aspect of devotion towards God. Apart from knowledge, knowledge leads to devotion, and devotion leads to love, and that brings in the grace of God, which leads to your mukti. And that is where, if you look at the Dvaita saints, starting from Madhvacharya, they have been singing a lot in terms of Dasa philosophy, and it started way back from Madhvacharya himself, and then with Vyasaraja, and there are many saints in this tradition who have sung a lot of devotional songs in praise of the Lord, even though being sannyasis, and that finally got culminated in the Dasa's era of Purandara Dasa, Kanaka Dasa, and so on. So it took its summit over there. So this is the essence of Dvaita. So which means to say there is clear duality between myself and God. The world that you see is real. There's a difference among souls. There's a gradations among souls. Liberation is realizing yourself, and pure bhakti and devotion is required for that. Now, I think this is a difference here between Advaita and Dvaita, which probably has been debated over centuries, and I really don't want to get into it, but highlight of it is Brahma Satyam. Advaita says Brahma Satyam, Dvaita also says Brahma Satyam, no doubt about it. Jagat Mityam, Satyam Jagat. Brahma Jiva na para, which means to say Brahma and Jiva, there is no difference, but he says Hari Paratara Bedo Jiva Gana. Now, moving on. So now, what are the important points here that bring out? So they said, never can the experience of pain and suffering in the world can be dismissed as false experience, right? So which means to say that you see something which can be a defect in your thought, but it is not a false experience. It is not an illusory experience. The point B.N.K. Sharma brings here is, in that book, the illusionist philosophy can never hope to establish anything for certain, because everything is an illusion. So this brings up a distinction between independent real and dependent real. The dependent real cannot obviously control one another without a higher principle connecting them, and therefore we human beings, being independent masters, we should expect to find peace. We know it is not, and this shows that the things are directed from unknown agencies. For the want of better name, we call it God, and to bring in that sort of a system where it could sustain, create, and destroy, that should be an entity which is full of attributes and not having any defects. And that is how they start with establishing God. And they start with scriptures again. The scriptures again talk about, if you go to one of the things that I was reading it, which I also found interesting reading it, because some of the slokas are also quite catchy when it comes. So I was trying to see one of this which establishes God, especially from the Vedic perspective. So I can quote one here. Yeah, it is from Taittiriya Upanishad, where they when I talk about this, who is God, who is Brahman, right? Yeah, let me open that. Yeah. So the thing is good. It says yatvo imani bhutani jayanti yatvo imani bhutani jayanti yena jatani jivanti yatya prayanti abhisya visanti tad vijignasva tad brahma. Again, there is no concept of religion here or tradition here. The point here is from where the things are born, and we see the things are born, from which they are born, they live, they enter, they merge. Seek to know that. That's all it says. From which the beings are born, things are born, they live, they die, they merge. You seek to know that. And you do jignasa on that, which means to say you try to know that, and that is Brahman. Right? And I could see a very similar analogy in Islam, which says that the purpose of you being here is to know him who created you. And this is where I was really fascinated reading this, because I was not getting the flair of religion anywhere, or the flair of a particular thing which binds me to a cult of people called Hinduism, Christianity, or Muslim. No, it seems to be a very genuine inquiry about how do I get created, where do I go, why do I live, who is there something which created me, is there something where I go after my death. How is a life sustained? Sometimes I think I control, sometimes I feel I don't control. How are things happening? So a lot of questions are there in everyone's mind. So the inquiry should start to know who is doing it, what is doing it, how is it being done. That inquiry is the start of Brahma Sutra. That's what it meant here, right? And so now, why do they call Satyam Jagat? Because according to this philosophy, they define Satyam. Now it is not that it is a postulate. It is not that they won't prove it. They define Satyam. Now for them, Satyam is existence at some point and place, and not necessarily as existence for all the time and throughout the space. If anything as an experience is present at some point in space and time, that is Satya. The unreal has no existence at all. Now, if you say something is not real, which means to say it is not there, then how can you know it is not real? Unreal means no, it's not there, right? They take example. I think this example has been beaten down to death: snake and rope, right? So well, I don't want to get in deep of it, but what according to Madhvacharya, this brings about snake and rope is that something which is real cannot be gotten rid of. Therefore, something unreal cannot be gotten rid of, right? Because it is not existing, so you can't get rid of it. Therefore, the only real but incorrect things can be gotten rid of. Therefore, our bondage is real and needs to be got rid of. So the suffering happens because of the bondage, and that needs to be got rid of. For that, you need to know the bondage is real. But if there's nothing to got rid of, then we be in eternally will be in bondage. So very important logical debates happened between philosophers at different places, especially taking this Satyam world and Ansatyam world, Shankaras and Madhva. I would not like to get into this at this point of time, but there is a good amount of logic and thought process. It is not belief. This is definitely not belief. There's a great thought process. There's a great logical arguments here. And I think we should probably not be dismissing it as this belief. So at a very high level, because I can't also leave it at there, it's very tempting as well. So Shankara presents his view in which he mistakes a rope for a snake. He mistakes a snake for a rope. And he says, once you get the knowledge about the rope, and it's not a snake, your fear is gone. Therefore, the fear that you had before was unreal, illusory, or Maya. This is the point of Advaitins or Shankara. So Madhvacharya presents a very interesting view. He says it's a transcendental realistic argument, which means to say, and I think it takes some time for you to understand this as well. I would probably share this. You can think about this. If this universe is to be regarded as imagined by a delusion, like the illusory snake in the rope, it would require the acceptance of a real universe that is the prototype of the imagined one. Right? So no theory of illusion can be demonstrated with at least two reals, a substratum of the illusion and a prototype of the superimposed object, which means to say, for a person who hasn't seen the snake in his entire life, can he mistake a rope as a snake? No, which means if a person has something in mind, a snake in mind, right, then only he can imagine the rope as a snake. So for the world to imagine is a delusion, we would have to accept that there should be two things. One is the imagined one, and the second is the prototype or the same world as the imagined one should be there, and both should be real. So Madhva's contention is materialistic world is the reflection of the transcendental realm. Both realms are form and real, which means to say the existence, the Brahma's existence of the world and our view of the world, they are both. I think he gives the analogy of a mirror, right? Which means to say Bimba Pratibimba Vada is what they call. And they say both are real, the differences are real, but some are temporary. So the point here they make is the defects in our thoughts should not be considered as unreal. Neither the thing that exists for a short period of time should not be considered as unreal. For example, I have the thought now that the rope is like a snake, and after some time that feeling might go off, but the feeling that I had cannot be dismissed as unreal because it was real. So the temporary things, although they exist temporarily, cannot be dismissed as unreal. I think Buddhism also comes in that line of thought where they say, do not give attention to kshanika things, right? The temporary things, where Shankara goes into probably goes into a thought process of dismissing the temporary things as unreal, but Madhvacharya is very clear on that aspect and brings in the concept of though things are temporary, you cannot dismiss it as unreal. So the primary difference is, as I said, between the jivas, there's a difference. Jiva and Ishvara, there's a difference, and matter, there's a difference. So they bring about Panchabheda difference here. And a very important point, maybe the last one for the day, I would say, because it will be too much, is the doctrine of Sakshi they bring in. You might have heard about this word Sakshi. So anything that you want to prove, I think they bring in two or three important aspects. One is pratyaksha, which has to be imagined by your mind. Pratyaksha is something that you see through your sense organs or experienced by your sense organs. And second is anumana, which is an inference. And third is agama. So you basically take decisions based on this. You experience the world based on this. You also come to know what is right, what is wrong based on this. As I said, first point is the immediate sense organs, which is pratyaksha. You hear, see, feel, and touch. Second is anumana. You do not feel it, but it's an anumana. For example, I cannot say that my grandfather did not exist. My father is lying that my grandfather did not exist because I didn't see him. I didn't experience him, right? Because I haven't seen at least I have not seen my father's father. So I cannot say he didn't exist. Now I have to infer, because for me to be existent, my father had to be there. Therefore, if my father had to be existent, my grandfather should be there. So that's an inference, which although I don't experience with my sense organs, I infer from it, right? So now everything which all the logics here, all the discussion happens based on this. One is pratyaksha, second is anumana, and then finally agama. Agama is what is there in the Vedas. Now take good. Now can any doubt that mind has should be resolved through pratyaksha, through anumana and sakshi. Now Madhvacharya brings in an important concept called sakshi. Now it is there in at least the Indian philosophies and maybe others as well, but it was not so highlighted. So sakshi is something which Madhvacharya finds the ultimate and absolute principles of knowledge and validation, the inner sense organs of the self of a man called Sakshi, more or less like an intuition. He calls it as a spiritual sense organ. And he says that mind is liable to error and is open to doubts, whereas judgments of Sakshi cannot be doubted. Right? And we, from my readings before of Jiddu Krishnamurti as well as in Osho, so I thought Sakshi was a mere observing and registering mission, that you just witness. Whatever is happening, you just witness. But reading this philosophy of Madhvacharya, he says it is more than that. It is more than observing and registering mission. It is your inner intuitive sense organs which knows what is right and what is wrong. And what more, after reading this, I could relate to something else, which was the Harvard speech by Steve Jobs. I don't know. There's a lot of connections that is going on in my mind as of now. Where if you look at the 13-minute speech of Steve Jobs after he got his first cancer operated, he gives a speech to Harvard University students. I'm not sure how many of you have really gone through that speech. It is a philosophical speech. He says, you already know what you want to become. This is a statement he makes. He already know what you want to become. Listen to it. It can never be wrong. And when you find that, just like love matters, you know the bell has rung in your heart. And after reading the doctrine of Sakshi philosophy in B.N.K. Sharma's book, I heard this speech from Steve Jobs again, and he's saying the same thing, that you know already what you want to become, and that cannot be wrong. And that, I think, was a very interesting experience for me. So I think the Sakshi philosophy is probably what I could highlight here as one brings in, because he says pratyaksha is clear, anumana is inference, where you have to, again, they give an example of smoke and fire in the mountain. If there is a smoke, you can infer there is a fire. So you have to do that. And then the ultimate test of reality for individual is in Sakshi. And why good deeds having pure sense organs and all those matters is because, according to him, Madhvacharya, the more pure in terms of this external sense organs here, your Sakshi will be that much clearer to you. And that is where we all experience this at some point of time with respect to our intuition, right? And I think Madhvacharya gives a lot of importance on that. And then the Agama is probably a sort of a reference, because again, you go back to the Vedas and validate whether it's right or wrong. Again, the Vedas are probably not so much religion oriented. Again, Vedas are something which proves God, and therefore there's nothing wrong in going back to the scriptures and validating what is right or wrong. But if the thing is available to you immediately with respect to pratyaksha, then Madhvacharya says you don't have to go to Agama, because if you can validate to pratyaksha, why do you want to go to Agama? Right? So for him, pratyaksha comes there. If you can do it to Anumana, and Sakshi should resolve most of the matters. And then Agama is something which is unquestionable here, because they always prove that Brahman is very important. Yeah, I think this is something which I have a lot more here to discuss. But I think this probably will go at some point of time. Maybe the last one which I could say. So if I could summarize this, as to what I've did so far, is in Dvaita, bring about, as I was summarizing before with Vyasatirtha's shloka, they bring about the uniqueness of the self, the Brahma Jignasa part of it, and the first stanza itself in Brahma Sutra, if you go to the Samanvaya Adhikarana, it's like Om Athato Om Brahma Jignasa Om. So which means to say, therefore now you should inquire into Brahman. Again, Brahman is not a Hindu deity, as I told, the one which creates, sustains, and have this creation. You should inquire on him. Right? It starts there. So that means the knowledge part of it starts there. And then it's interesting that if you listen to some passionate people, how they talk about, right? I mean, I think Ravi and I were also having a discussion with one of the guys, and then he said the knowledge of it translated into love. Now they don't know any of this philosophy, but invariably knowledge transfers into love, because you start inquiring into it, you start feeling it, you start experiencing it, you want more and more of it, and then you end up loving it, and that translates to bhakti, and that's all possible because of the grace of God. And I think Madhvacharya is probably one of those philosophers which who I found have gone to the extreme. For him, all souls are not equal, right? Uh, Maybe have some similarities with Christianity. There are some souls which will never attain liberation, right? And that is purely on the nature of the souls. And that is where Madhvacharya do not hold God accountable for each and everything. So his free will concept needs to be studied in detail. He doesn't hold God accountable for everything, because one of the factors is that the nature of the soul, the knowledge, the devotion of the God, and based on the grace of the God comes in, that leads to liberation. So the nature of the soul plus God's grace leads to effort, and that leads to liberation. So it's quite a different philosophy, even though, and I think it's different in the sense like not all souls will be liberated and not all souls are equal as well. And therefore, he explains the 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 the, the problem of evilness in the world, and he says it's bound to exist. Again, to summarize it through one of the saints about the God, about Brahman itself. In the Kannada verse, it says, "Obbanali nintaaduvanu, mattobbanali noduvanu, ಬೇಡುವನು ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬನಲ್ಲಿ, ನೀಡುವನು ಮಾತನಾಡುವನು ಬೆರಗಾಗಿ, ಅಬ್ಬರದ ಹದ್ದೈವನಿವ ಮತ್ತೊಬ್ಬರ ಲೆಕ್ಕಿಸನು, ಲೋಕದಳು ಒಬ್ಬನೇ ತಾ ಬಾಧ್ಯ ಬಾಧಕನಾಹ ನಿರ್ಭೀತ," which means to say, he is the only one. And in Samanvayadika, they prove it in the sense like there's only one God. And he operates through each and every one. He is the only one who does it without any reason. Badhya badakanaha nirbhita. And that's how they define it. So there are a lot of stuff here. I'm sure I'll not be able to cover everything at this point of time. But a different thought process for me, at least in the last 2 to 3 months. Maybe we can continue it further as well. So I'll stop here at this point. I will share this PPT also for you guys to take a look.
Great, Rajeev. Oh, you have covered so many things in such a short time span.
It's not been easy for me as well. So thoughts.
Yeah.
Confused, angry sometimes, but because all these things are mix of traditions. Sometimes I listened 1 hour a day to some of the sermons given by saints. They only give it in mutts. I'm not sure I can go to mutt every time, but there seems to be something interesting.
Okay, great. So I have noted down few points, Rajeev.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
wherever I thought some clarity needs to be there. Sorry. Yeah. So, but you have covered it really well. I mean, such a large body of data that you have searched, I can see from there. So the first topic that you mentioned, okay. So maybe for clarity, what we can do, there is already one this wiki link. I'll just post it here. What you explained, I mean, this wiki link explains. It is called Anubandha Chatushtaya.
Okay.
So it says Adhikari, Vishaya, Sambandha, and Prayojana. There are four Anubandhas. I mean, they are interlinked to each other. One is Adhikari. I mean, the person who wants to know. I mean, this is discussed in Brahma Sutras actually. So why Brahma Sutra? You covered it really well. Because what we do in life is to search happiness. So all these happinesses are temporary. So the ultimately, after having money, after having everything that you desire materialistically, one thinks, what is that happiness which makes me content and full and not yearn for more?
Hmm.
Where does this yearning start?
Correct.
So stop where it stops. That's how he thinks. That's where the Dvaita philosophy takes that question as Purva Paksha for the first sutra. Okay, so if you want happiness in its fullest extent, and if it needs to be eternal, and if it needs to be content, and after feeling that, experiencing that happiness, if you don't want to yearn for more, then therefore now athato brahma jignasa. Now you start inquiry into Brahman. So then they will answer why I have to start inquiry into Brahman if I have to have happiness. Then they will dissect the word Brahman, how it is defined in the scriptures. Brahman is all powerful. So all this omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, all these meanings will come in the word Brahma. And there is also one more interpretation of the word, which is full of bliss. Brahman is full of bliss. So that is why you should start inquiring into Brahman. Like that it starts. So you covered it really well.
Yeah.
So Anubandha Chatushtaya in that link, maybe you can see
Sure.
more. So that one is Adhikari. So the person who comes to this conclusion that I want to see more than these temporary happinesses. Uh, I want to see the completeness of happiness. I want to see contentment in it. I want to see fullness in it. That is the Adhikari. What is the Vishaya? I mean, what he needs to do, that is the Vishaya of the Brahma Sutra. And then Prayojana.
Prayojana, yeah.
So after doing this, after inquiry into the Brahman, what you will get, that is Prayojana. And there is a interlinking sense to it. Like, when you said it, if he is a sannyasi, there is no Prayojana for him in the Kama Sutras.
Yeah.
For Kama Sutra, the Adhikari is different, not a sannyasi. So what he is yearning for, what he is studying, and what he will get, there has to be some meaning to some relationship which is meaningful. So sannyasi is not an adhikari for Kama Sutra. So then there is no Anubandha Chatushtaya there. So that is one thing. And you talked about number of Brahma Sutras. Actually, the numbers vary from 555 to 564, 562, all those things. But it is only a matter of splitting one into two. It is just the text remains same. The length of the text is same. But some traditions consider two sutras as one sutra. That is where number varies. Towards the end of the fourth chapter, they treat it like that. But as far as the text is concerned, the length of text of all the Brahma Sutras considered by all schools remains same. And so B.N.K. Sharma is the first guy who presented Dvaita philosophy in English. One more person, K.T. Pandurangi, he has written a lot in English. Maybe you can refer to his books actually. He has covered many parts which are not touched by B.N.K. Sharma.
Okay.
He was actually student of B.N.K. Sharma, Pandurangi. Last year or so he passed away.
Oh, okay.
And
but what I was amazed also, you gave us some of the saints that came in the lineage. We know them only for sort of religious activities. For example, I got to know that Raghavendra Swami. We know him only for religious things, but the amount of work that they have done in the field is somehow only with the mutts. So I was amused to see the tools and the frameworks that they have created to interpret Brahma Sutras. Seems to be a wealth of knowledge.
Yes.
Which doesn't come to the forefront.
There's actually very huge texts are there. So the Brahma Sutras, as we know, it is as Yoga Sutras, Brahma Sutras, they are all of same length, we can say. But Raghavendra Swami, he has, in terms of scriptures, what he has done, he has given one small book explaining the Brahma Sutras in 1 or 2 lines. And he has written volumes, volumes like 7 or 8 books, each containing 400 pages, explaining the same sutras. So there he considers how it differs from other schools, and he defends ideas of his school. So those are all, for scholars to read, and for us, we will have to dedicate an entire life to study all those things.
And then what he said that my skills are not for sale. I think I was very, very taken aback by that statement. He said my skills are not for sale, and I was just thinking now. We put in our resumes in market and go to job and say, give me 50 lakhs, I'll work. But then a person of that stature says, my skills are not for sale. It's from existence, and it's going back to the existence.
Yeah,
I was just wondering, where am I?
Yeah, actually, so in the movie also they have covered it. The movie of Raghavendra Swami, where Rajkumar has played Raghavendra Swami role. This part they have covered it very well. So when his wife goes to earn few bucks by cleaning the puja utensils of somebody else, he scolds her. So you are doing service to God by cleaning God's utensils. For that you are asking money. So do I have to live by this money? Then she throws away whatever she had, and then you would really think, have these people really lived on this earth? So they are not so like us. They are very different from us.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
But I started feeling tense now because I'm leaving Siemens. But I was just
one small question here, in the sense, so between Dvaita and Advaita, see, Advaita started somewhere around 700 to 800, and Dvaita came in 1300. But in between these two, at 1000 to 1100, there is Vishishtadvaita by Ramanuja.
Yes.
So that also got me confused, because the third Vishishtadvaita talks about entirely different thing. In the sense, it's the same philosophy, but again he intermingles the words and then further cause confusion. So any light on that?
Yeah, that is my next point. Maybe you can open that page that where Sriman Madhvamate Harif Parataraha, that sloka that you have quoted, Rajiv.
Just a time check. 7:37. Others also.
Sorry.
We can continue next week.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
We can do that.
Yeah, I think
We will start with the Q&A and
really
then
great.
proceed next week. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That way, I think, maybe Yogi, just as a thought.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you.
Yogi, maybe just as a thought, wherever Rajiv showed us some slides, wherever some additional thoughts were there, maybe if we can go through each of those the way you started today, we can go from there. And also any Q&A that we would like to have, we can have that first. And that way, I think next session can be a continuation of whatever we discussed nicely.
Right.
And maybe Rajiv, if you could share the slides with Yogi also, maybe if there are some additional points that you would like to clarify, that also we can do together, both you and Yogi, clarifying potentially.
Raju, send it to us also. It will help for us for Q&A also.
It is just a raw document, so you have to take it as a trigger and do research.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was intending to do. Yeah. Thank you.
Correct. And that's where I had one more request to both of you, Rajiv and Yogi. Maybe the books that you folks referred, that Wikilink has those links, or if not, then you may want to also just ping it on the chat.
I think sure. PNK Sharma, I'll ping it.
And Pandurangi also, Yogi mentioned.
Pandurangi, I have to still, Yogi, you can share it. But BNK Sharma is really about metaphysics. There's nothing called, no religious flavor here. Wonderful book. I could not understand some of the topics here.
Okay, cool, good. So, and also this
P.N. Krishnamurti Sharma, is it?
Yes.
Okay. I'll start researching. Yeah, thank you.
And also the Brahma Sutras, whatever is the one to probably dig further, whether it is in English or in Kannada, please do share. because that probably is something that I would personally like to explore a little bit more as well. Because in Buddhism also, there is something called as Abhidhamma. Abhidhamma and this Brahma Sutra slide, what Raji you showed, no? They seemed so startlingly same to me.
Oh, okay.
So I would probably just like to explore this Brahma Sutra also a little bit further for my own benefit.
Sure. I will share the PDF, the link here.
On Brahma Sutras also, this guy has written, D.N.K. Sharma.
Okay.
And soft copies are also available, I guess. I just need to check. I remember. But I
Yeah.
didn't check.
If you have, please share it, Yogi.
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Great start to the
see you all.
weekend. Thank you.
Absolutely.
See you.
Absolutely.
See you all. Bye. Bye.
bye-bye.
See you all, folks. Take care.
Great, Rajeev. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, Ravi. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely
Bye.
great session, Rajeev. Absolutely great session.
Yeah, very
Thanks a
good.
lot.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye.